Yeah, so I got into a world of computer science, was actually back in high school. Originally, I was interested in IT, and then I took this little class in high school called coding computer repair. And when we were coding it, it was just crazy. Like there would be a list of arrays, and then we would count like how many times five appears, and I thought that was really cool. So I changed my major from IT to computer science, and yeah, here we are.
Awesome, man. So, tell us a little bit about your current role at Discover. Like, that typical question, like, what do you do in a day? What does a typical day look like? And I know typical days aren't always the case, but maybe like a typical week to aggregate that stuff. Like, what does a week look like?
Yeah, so primarily, I want to say like maybe 70% of the time or something with my team, the Flux team, which Flux is an internal Discover app, and they primarily use Kafka. And we basically attend these Scrum meetings, and we tell our progress, what we worked on yesterday, and what we're going to work on today, and basically attend our users or work on our user stories. However, it's not always like that. We also have support because we are internal apps, so we do have to support other teams at Discover. So right now I'm in support. So what I do right now is the top priority is to monitor these GitHub issues and then also go on the Microsoft Teams channel chat and see if any issues uh, other employees at Discover are facing. If they are, it's my job to try to solve it. And if I can't solve it, I try to reach out to someone more experienced than me on my team, and I'm able to solve it. And then sometimes, like I mentioned, Kafka. So Kafka is a technology. It's a streaming service, and it's primarily one of our vendor is Confluent. And sometimes we would have engagements with them to see how Discover can implement Kafka better and how we can upgrade our systems. So last week we actually had a PS engagement. There were 8-hour meetings with Confluent, and we would show them like how we're using Kafka right now, and then how we can upgrade our system. And I'm not sure if you guys heard of Kafka, but you guys might have used it if you ordered an Uber. So on the Uber app, when the car is coming close to you, that's actually Kafka because they're sending data really fast. So from the driver's personal device to your personal device, they're sending each other data really fast, and that's how you can see the car coming really close to you as the Uber driver's picking you up.
Raj, you mentioned you had some 8-hour meetings with Kafka. Like,
Confluent.
yeah. At what point did you how did you stay focused during an 8-hour meeting?
Oh wow. Well, we do have breaks in
I
between.
hope.
Yeah, yeah, fortunately. Um, yeah, I am relatively new, so I did start. This is my fifth week here, so some stuff did go from one year out to another. But I just ask questions. My team's very supportive. I always ask them questions on like what we're doing. I'm not an expert per se, but I'm still working on it. And yeah, those breaks help. And if you're ever confused, we just ask each other, and we just get through it.
Speaking of asking good questions, that reminds me to everyone here, if you have a question, please bring it to the table. If you want to use the hand raising feature, or if you'd rather type your
Mhm.
question in the chat, you can do that. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can always send a private message to me if you'd rather remain anonymous, and I can always ask that to Raj as well. So yeah, please, I have some questions prepared, but I would love for everyone here to get involved, or whoever feels comfortable doing that. If you have a question throughout, please feel free to ask it. I know, Raj, we were before we started, you were also telling me about you have an interesting work schedule right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I'm on support. So that means in the morning, I'm monitoring GitHub issues and Teams channel chat. But sometimes other teams I discovered they actually have to upgrade their system. And they can't do that in the morning because there's a lot of traffic. They have to do that at night. So sometimes they make special requests. So I believe today I have an install at 7 p.m. So I just help customers if they need anything help with Flux. I make sure I'm there, and I help them either register schemas, register like their producer API, register topics, basically anything that they want, anything Kafka related they want. Flux has to be there so we can help upgrade their system smoothly at night.
Yeah, so if you didn't think third shift existed in software engineering, it can. The customer
Yep.
always comes first. That's something good to keep in mind is, what's going to keep that customer happy. So I wanted to then kind of like just back up a little bit. If you can, we want to kind of dig into your career journey. I shared with everyone, I think in our initial invite, Raj's LinkedIn. If you're not following
Mhm.
him, it has his career path, some previous experiences that he had. Um, Back in 2020, you did an internship with Code Labs. Tell us a little bit about that and what you gained from that experience.
Yeah, so that was during like the height of COVID. Um, I found this through LinkedIn actually, and they had a program, so I applied, and I was assigned a mentor and three other teammates, and we decided to build a React application, a web app that allowed. It was primarily based in New York, so users can type in basically the zip code of New York, any zip code, and they're able to find volunteer opportunities around that area. Because during COVID, volunteer was a very big during the height of COVID, so we decided to make a React app using related to volunteerism. And I was able to learn about React, how to work with teammates, how to plan user stories. Uh, because first we were using like a Word doc to like write what we're gonna do, but that got messy. So we used something called Trello, and that just like that just allowed us to organize our project better. And just very valuable skills: communication, project planning, and of course some technical skills like HTML, React, JavaScript, and yeah, I primarily played with backend database as well. So I was able to play around with Google Firebase, which is one of Google's databases.
And do you feel like just doing that internship, how do you feel like that maybe helped you or gave you a leg up when you started applying for? I know you did an internship with Discover First, but did that help you get that internship opportunity? How did that provide leverage for you?
Oh, actually, I did. Sorry, just reiterate. I did the internship at Code Labs first, and then during Discover. So I was when they asked me like some of the questions, I was able to show them some of my experience at like how I work with teammates. So teamwork's very big at Discover. So I got asked a lot of teamwork questions. So I think that allowed me to get a leg up because I worked in a team. I worked with the team. We made this whole project together. We planned the project. We had failures. We had success. And I think that's what allowed me to get a leg up during the interview process.
That's cool. So having that internship experience, it gave you, talking points and examples to
Hmm.
give in your Discover interview. That's fantastic. And you did two internships before you graduated. That's amazing. Like, you know, I know DePaul, we require everyone does that one experiential learning, but that's bare minimum what you want to be doing. If you can do more than one internship, I know that's not always possible, but
Hmm.
don't stop at just one. If you get it out of the way early, look for opportunities to do more stuff before you graduate, because each internship grows your opportunities when you graduate exponentially. So that's amazing. um, you also worked as a teaching assistant at Teals. um, I don't know, was that something you did kind of, was that for fun? Was that, I guess what was, how did you approach that position?
That was actually so one of my friends told me about it. He was also a computer science student, and we decided we wanted to help because in high school we weren't. I was fortunate enough to have a coding class, but in high school not everyone's doesn't have a coding class. They don't have that luxury, or just they don't have that class. So we decided, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to teach high school students about Python. This will allow, because if you teach someone something, that means you learn the material better too. So that was actually a good skill to have, just to like teach Python. It's just basics, just like some of Python, but nothing too extreme like data structures, just the basics of Python, just to teach high school students. That I did during my school year. So that was my junior year of DePaul. I did that for about a year, I believe. Yeah.
But that's amazing. Like, yeah, like teaching you to someone else how to do something makes you learn it better. And also, I think that's so valuable to show to employers like, hey, I know how to communicate these things to other people.
Hmm.
Communication skills I think are such an undervalued part of software development engineering. And I think it's something a lot of folks don't necessarily think about at the forefront of their mind when they get into this field. I know I want to get to Sarah's question. Sarah, go for it.
Yeah, hi, thank you. And thank you so
Hello.
much for coming in to talk to us. So my question was, do you have any tips for getting your first industry internship when you don't have prior tech experience?
Yeah. So actually, I didn't have prior tech experience when I got the Code Labs experience, or even, I mean, I guess the Discover one, but the Code Labs one, that was only for like a month. And that was mostly front end. So, and then the position I was applying for Discover was more back end and more infrastructure. Um, I would say, once you take your DePaul these classes at DePaul and you get these projects, just put it on GitHub, put it on your resume. So once it's on GitHub, an employer, if they're interested, they can go on your GitHub, use the code, and sometimes interviewers, they would go to your GitHub, and if they see something interesting, they might ask you about it. So that way they're interested in the project, and since you did the project, you can talk about it more. And I would say, really, if I would give one tip to like young Raj or like any freshman at DePaul or any student, please go to the career fairs. I really beg them, please go to the career fairs. The way I found about Discover was through a technology career fair, and if I never went there, I would have never got a job at DePaul. And even if you don't have any technology background, once they see like some of the projects you did, or maybe some of the classes you take in, they might give you an interview, and if they think you're a good fit, you'll get an offer, and that'll be your first industry experience. So I would say please go to a career fair and make sure you research these companies, and just research these companies, research the interviewers if you get an interview, and just try your best on doing that. And then DePaul has many career fairs, so I would say try to attend as many as you can. But most importantly, the technology fair, I think for all of us, I think the technology fair would be the most valuable.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
No problem.
Raj, something you said about GitHub, which I hope everybody here knows at least what GitHub is. If you don't have a GitHub yet, at least you kind of know what it is, and you're kind of thinking about what to include on there. But did you, for your own personal GitHub, like was it a mixture of class projects and personal projects? Did it, was it all class projects? Was it a mix? Like, what did you have on there?
A little bit of mix. I think it was more class projects. Like I took a web development and stuff, but there are some couple personal projects. Like I had a personal project when I was first getting into web development. I just made a basic landing page of basically like Vincent Software Company. I was like, because it's St. Vincent, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna just name it Vincent Software Company. And basically, I just played around with HTML, CSS, and this way it allows you, once you do something, you can learn like more efficiently. So like what you're doing, and it was just good practice of pushing code on GitHub. And some of the interviewers were very curious about like why I started this project, and this just gave me a leg up because I was able to talk about it more, and then talk about what I learned and some of my failures and success going when I made that personal project. And then also with class projects, some interviewers were interested in that, so I also talked about that as well.
That's great. Yeah, I think something I hear from employers is like, class projects are great and you should definitely include them. It's certainly it's a million times better than not including that stuff. But to go that extra step, like you want to kind of tinker around on your own and experiment, play around with different languages or different concepts, and get some of your own projects on there too. So that's validating to hear. I think you want a good mixture of both, but at the very least, just have a GitHub that you can kind of show, because without that, you're kind of just running in place. You're probably not going to get a lot of interviews. That's great. I wanted to ask about with Discover. I know there's maybe only so much you can say about what you do on a day-to-day basis, but like as far as the interview process goes, you kind of mentioned it. They ask you some stuff about your GitHub page. Like, how would you characterize those interviews? Like, what was the technical interview component like for you? Like, I know that's something that a lot of students are curious about, is a technical interview.
So for the technical interview, I had a HackerRank sent to me online. And they had about like 10 questions. So I believe 5 of them were multiple choice and the other 5 was some coding. And then each one gets harder. I didn't solve all of them. The last one was really, really hard. But yeah, so I solved most of them. I tried to answer it to the best of my ability. Fortunately, I got the interview. So the first interview, that was more technical based. So he went over my hacker rank, and then he would tell me like, okay, like I mentioned, I didn't finish one problem, but he would tell me like, what would my approach be if I had more time? Like just overall explain my thinking, maybe some basic object-oriented programming questions, and then after that, it was mostly just behavioral questions like communication and teamwork primarily.
Did they ask you to give a lot of specific examples? Like when it came to the behavioral questions, like did you have to pull a lot from projects that you worked on or previous internship experiences?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, like Discover is very big on teamwork. So I had to actually pull a lot of my answers from, show them like results. Like, hey, in Code Labs, I worked with the team, and this is how we organized a project. This is how we worked as a team. And same thing even with my personal projects, like not personal, sorry, like class projects. If I work with other students, I was able to show them like how, or answer questions based on like how the class projects I worked together at DePaul with other students. So I had to pull a lot of experiences from those projects I did at DePaul and Code Labs.
We had a question come in the chat from William. William asked, what would you say was more difficult, the technical interviews or the behavioral interviews?
That's a tough one, William. Technical or behavioral? I want to say both, but if I had to pick one, I would say technical, because it is like they do want to know that you have some sort of technical skills. So they did ask some tough questions, but sometimes with these tech interviews, they want to know how you think too. So it doesn't matter if you can't solve the problem. I know it does help, but sometimes these interviews, they just want to know how you think and how you approach this problem. So they just get a better sense of how you're thinking how you're thinking about the problem. But yeah, if I had to pick one, I would say technical.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is just you don't always have to have the solution, but you want to just be able to like kind of spell out your thought process and like how you justify making decisions, why you decided what you decided, and you didn't go down a different path. I think that's important, and something that, for a technical interview, I think a lot of employers look for is like, what is the decision-making process behind this, basically, right? Yeah. So, I know you graduated this year. Did you have a lot of other interviews? I don't know if the internship went right into the job, or was there a break there where you were looking?
Yeah, so in terms of so I graduated in the winter quarter of this year, but I did have a previous intern at Discover, and then after the internship, they were able to offer me a full-time offer. So I did accept it because I loved my experience and I learned a lot, and I thought this was a great fit for both of us. So Discover and me, so I just signed it. But from March to August, it was kind of a long break. So I did have so like I mentioned before, going to the career fairs, there was a company called Crow, and I wouldn't have known about them if I didn't go to the career fair. So fortunately, they were hiring for some internships. They were hiring some interns, and I decided to apply, and unfortunately, I got in. So during that break, I was able to get an internship. But after the internship, I just started my full-time job at Discover.
Did you have a period where you were applying to stuff and you weren't, like maybe before the internship with Discover, where like, were you applying to things and just not getting anywhere? Or did you have any interviews that didn't go anywhere?
Yeah, so I had applying for internships and jobs, it can be stressful, but always just push through it and just keep applying. I know it sounds cliche, but like I had tons of ghosted interviews. Some of the jobs I even got a reply. I haven't got a reply yet. So I failed a lot of interviews. You always have to try. But with these interviews, the interviews that failed, that helped me because then it allowed me to. It showed me like, hey, what do I need to work on? Do I need to work on these technical skills? Okay, I need to work on these behavioral skills because the question, the way I answered it didn't make sense at all. So it just allowed me to get better and better at interviewing, which for then at Discover, I was able to interview pretty well, and then they were able to give me an offer. So just even if you fail interviews, don't be down on yourself. The CS interviews are really hard. Just keep pushing and just keep trying.
Were there any particular interview questions that you can remember that you really maybe struggled on or fumbled, and you knew like in the moment, man, I could have answered that better? And do you feel like did you get those questions again, and were you able to kind of iterate and get better at them?
Yeah, there was like a string. One of the companies I interviewed at, there was like some sort of string builder question, and then I wasn't able to solve it. But then after like the interview, like 2 days later, I approached the problem again, and I was able to solve it. And I was like, oh man, how can I think of this? In terms of asking the interview, same interview question again, that didn't happen. But the method, the way you approach the method, like okay, then I got another question. The hacker rate, I knew I had to use a string builder, and I knew that because I failed the previous interview. So like it wasn't the same question, but I knew like in order to solve this effectively, I need to use a string builder. So sometimes it's just the methods. You don't really get the same question, but sometimes applying the same method or the same data structure, that happens a lot. I think
I'm muted.
okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be
Yeah.
one of these if I didn't talk over being muted accidentally once. Ali has a question.
Thanks guys for inviting me. So I have a question. So I started this fall semester. Should I just start applying for internship right away or wait for 1 year? What would be the best time to approach for the internship?
You're a freshman or what year?
I'm a graduate. I'm doing masters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say apply right now. It doesn't hurt. I would recommend getting like a LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a lot of companies have LinkedIn. They post a lot of job offers there. Go to LinkedIn, Glassdoor. Yeah, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and Handshake. They're usually my top three. So I always apply for jobs. I would say start right now. Just apply early, because if you apply early, there's a higher probability you get more and more interviews, and then higher probability you might get an offer as well.
I would also just say, to add to that, Ali, like we're having our tech fair in the fall. There's a couple other fall hiring events. A lot of those employers are hiring for next summer. So I think a good rule of thumb, like I mentioned, Google is going to be here next week. They're looking for people for next summer. Like usually the larger the company, the more lead time they're going to need or have to do they're going to they'll be able to plan out their hiring better. So your big tech companies like Google and Facebook and stuff like that, they're looking now for people for next summer, for interns as well as full-time employees. So that doesn't mean to say that if you don't land something in the fall that you won't find something for next summer. It might just be smaller to mid-sized companies that are posting more stuff at the start of the new year, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I would like to add, if you have time to attend these career fairs, especially the technology fair, I would highly recommend it. I mean, a lot of companies go there. I know some of my DePaul friends, they were also able to find jobs at other companies through DePaul's technology fair primarily. So if you have the time, I'll definitely go to these career fairs.
Yeah, actually there is a career fair tomorrow, so I'll go there definitely. Thanks.
Oh, okay. No.
We had another question from Shoab. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. What are the must-take subjects for masters in computer science? So I know, Raj, you were a bachelor's student, so I don't know if you would feel comfortable at answering a question like this. But are there, you were obviously given a chance to take some electives. Like, were there classes that you found or subjects that you found particularly helpful?
Yeah. In terms of bachelor's, again, Shob, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, I'm not sure in terms of masters, but going back to elective questions, I would say web development. So I took another web development class. I believe it was like IT 231 or something, web development one. And that class, we had to make an e-commerce application. So like sort of like Amazon, but like, like not that advanced, much less advanced. But that class allowed me to use my front end, back end, and then we were also using databases. We're also using command lines. So that project really helped. I guess made my resume pop, if you will. Like made my resume better because I was able to put that e-commerce project on my resume, and it was also on GitHub as well. So sometimes that project I got asked most of my questions in terms of project was that project because a lot of people were interested about this e-commerce site I made during my web development class and the technologies I used because we used like Node.js, and then I used like a Red Hat database system, and then a lot of interviewers, they were very interested about those two technologies.
We had another question just come in. What year do you think students should start applying for internships? I've heard some people say they get internships as freshmen with no experience. What do you think?
I say right now, even if you're a freshman, I say apply right now, because although it's hard to get an internship as a freshman because you're just starting out, but once you keep applying, you're able to practice your interviews better, because you need to practice, and then once you get more and more interviews, you'll become better and better at it. So William, I'll say start right now. Even if you're a freshman, I'll just say start right now. Go to these career fairs, go to Handshake, LinkedIn, whatever you do. Just like if you have time, I would say just apply to jobs right now. Even though it'd be hard to get a job as a freshman, you never know. And then even if you don't get it, you're still able to be practicing becoming a better interviewer, because you'll get asked questions about like teamwork, communication, and then maybe some technologies and so on.
To add to that, Raj, I think that's good. Like, if you're not the exact fit, don't let that stop you from applying. I think, if you're meeting some qualifications. Shoaib, are you meaning to be unmuted? Shoaib, you're unmuted. Did you want to ask a question?
Oh, sorry, I just opened my mic by mistake.
Oh, no worries. What I was saying, so the job fair tomorrow, the in-person one, and even the virtual one, like, if maybe you don't feel like you're ready to work yet, or even do an internship yet, if you're pretty early in the program, it still might be worth it to go to those events just to learn like the in-person fair, what a job fair looks like, the layout, how those are structured, so that next year or the next one, when you do feel more ready, you are a little bit more prepared in how to approach it, and you're not going in cold. And maybe even just chatting with a couple of employers and just learning a little bit more about what they're looking for, so that you feel more comfortable when there's more on the line a little bit later. With those virtual fairs, with those, you have to schedule with individual employers beforehand, so it's not like you're wandering around. Some of them it's one-on-ones, others you're in maybe a group session where that employer is talking to you about what their needs are. I would say definitely sign up for those too, because the pressure is off. Like, you don't have to say anything and they're just kind of talking to you. So if there are opportunities to do that with companies that you're interested in, I definitely recommend it. It just gives you exposure and gives you some good general knowledge as well. So let me see here. How did Raj, when you were having these interviews, how would you prep for them? Like, what would go into that for you?
To prepare, so I would research the company first. So like William, once you attend these career fairs, you're going to get better and better on how to research companies as well too. So that's why I recommend starting early. But yeah, I would research companies, and I'll research the company I'm interviewing for. See what they do, see what the work culture is like, see what the values are. Because if I don't really like their values, there's no point in interviewing with them, But that's besides the point. But research these companies, research the interviewer, and then I would also go to Elite Code. I needed, I'm not gonna here sit and say, I did like 40 hours of Elite Code, but I would do like Elite Code is hard. It's very frustrating. I get it. I'm not a fan of Elite Code either, but that's how the interviews are structured. So we would have to go to Lead Code and just try to tackle these problems. So I'd set up, set some time, like maybe if the interview's in like 2 weeks, maybe like 2 hours or something. Like just do even during my school year, as I was applying for a job, I would set some time, like maybe an hour a day, just to do some Lead Code. Even those SI sessions, I don't know if DePaul still does that, but sometimes the SI leaders, we would have like, they would put like a Lead Code question up. So I was able to practice some of my data structure skills during those SI sessions as well. And with that, we could also work together. And then if another student has a better method, I'm able to learn that. And then if that question comes up in an interview, I know the right way to approach it.
We have another question. Ty, I'm sorry, I don't remember how to pronounce your name. I do apologize, but if you want to go ahead and ask a question.
Oh, it's Teho.
Teho, sorry.
Yeah, so I do have a question about the career fair, because it's basically my first time going to the fair, and I'm actually quite curious about how it's gonna be like. Or do I just go and having conversation with the employees, or it's more like a lecture base?
So I'll field this one. So the one tomorrow, that's going to be an in-person fair at our Lincoln Park campus. It's going to be in the DePaul Student Center, and there's that big atrium kind of gymnasium type room in there. There's going to be, I think, about 60 or so employers at that. And they're all going to have their own tables set up, their own booths, which you're going to be standing behind. And students are going to be kind of shuffling around the room and talking to the employers that they want to talk to. I'd recommend dressing up a bit. That doesn't mean you need to wear a suit, but I'd say like a polo or a button down and like dark jeans or khakis or something like that. But I did say earlier, like, even if you don't feel ready, maybe attend. I do think dressing up a bit is probably smart, and maybe finding a couple of employers that you want to maybe target and go up and strike up conversations with, because otherwise that it's super overwhelming. And this is a general all-purpose fair, and a lot of those employers might not have anything to do with what you're looking for if you're in CS, but there are, I think, 7 or 8 that do. So you want to make sure you know who they are beforehand, so you're not wasting your time. Make the most of your time while you're there. So do a little bit of research. Start with Handshake. It says all the employers are going to be there. It also says what they're recruiting for, and then that's your place to start with the research, and then go directly to the company website to learn more about that company, and maybe find some full job or internship descriptions that you can read about. Bring, if you have them, if they're updated, bring copies of your resume. Bring something with you to take notes. Have maybe some questions written down beforehand that you want to make sure you ask. And maybe if you're getting a good conversation, you can jot down some stuff that they say. Maybe you can kind of collect business cards. You can reach out to them later. Yeah, treat it with that same respect that you would treat an interview, because you never know what great things can come of it, but the only way that great things can come of it is if you are kind of respecting them and their time too. Raj, did you go to any of the, I know there probably weren't any in-person job fairs in the last couple of years that you were at DePaul, but how did you find the virtual job fair experiences?
Yeah, I liked it. So I had 2 sessions, like I remember you mentioned. There's a group session and one-on-one session. So I had with Discover, I was able to book a one-on-one session, and I was also in the group session as well. And then, Discover did a great job presenting like their company and some of the opportunities that they'll have for internship. And I was able to ask him some questions I had regarding to Discover and the internship program. I love the virtual career fair.
And I also the Thursday is the second day of the fall fair, and that's going to be virtual. I did just learn actually that the fall tech fair in November 10th is going to be in person, which I had previously heard that was going to be virtual because we had thought that that's what those employers wanted. The last few weeks, there's been a big shift, and they all want to be in person now for whatever reason. So be prepared for that. It's going to be an in-person fair in the fall, or in November, I should say. Speaking, I guess we're talking about virtual stuff, like what did you learn, or any tips you can give about interviewing virtually through Zoom or whatever other virtual platform that you used?
Any tips on virtual interviewing?
Did you run into any
test? Sorry, you're gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, if you ran into any issues your first interviews that maybe you learned from, and like you were kind of saying, I'm assuming test your internet connection, make sure that it's
test your internet connection, test the audio, make sure it works, because it's gonna be awkward once the interview starts, and then you're spending like 3 to 5 minutes just trying to figure out your audio. So definitely start at least like 10 minutes, maybe. I would say just get ready at 10 minutes before. So if the interview's at let's say 10 a.m., just at 9:50, just get ready, just test everything, mic, camera, internet, everything. If your power is low, just make sure to plug it in. Do that. And then second is I would dress up. I know it's not in person, but I think I don't know about you guys, but I tend to overthink a lot, so I just dress up. So even I know there's a meme, like you wear like a suit attire on top and then like sweatpants on the bottom. So I tend to overthink a lot. I just dress up, just wear dress pants, do everything. So that way I'm not thinking about it. So that way, even if there's like a break, if I go up to drink some water, use the bathroom, it's not awkward when they see like me in the sweatpants. They'll just see me in like like dress shirt or dress pants. So I'll try to say definitely dress up. Maybe don't go too hard because it's virtual, but I'll definitely say dress up, and then so you don't think about your attire, and then definitely test your mic, make sure your power is good, everything's good.
I'll just say at least you were wearing pants.
Yeah.
Sweatpants are better than no pants for sure. And also I like how you said that, like dress up, then you don't have to think about it. Because if you're not dressed up, then are you going to be thinking in the back of your head, like, should I have dressed up? Now you don't have to worry about it. And also, like, sometimes, this doesn't happen for everybody, but sometimes when you do dress up a little bit, you just feel more professional, more prepared. And you're going to automatically go in with a little bit more confidence too, I think. So yeah, always dress up for video interviews, even if it doesn't seem like you have to. I think it's good practice for sure. Internet connection, what about like, did you find it was helpful virtual interviewing? Because you could have all of your stuff in front of you. You can have the job description, you can have your resume, like notes. Like, did you take advantage of that, like using your screens and any like notepads that you had?
I don't really have it in front of me. Like if there's an interview coming, I'll just maybe open like a Word doc, put the company's name, research the company, research my interviewers, and just read through it. So because I overthink a lot. So if I have this in front of me, I might be looking down here, looking down there. That way, because once I keep reading and researching, I'm gonna know it better. I'm gonna know the company better. So I didn't really take advantage of like having like a job description or whatever in front of me. Also, one thing, please put the phone on silent, because one time in one of the interviews, my phone wasn't on silent and it went off. So another tip would be to please turn off your phone or put it on silent. Just put it away.
Oh yeah, that goes for face-to-face interviews too, for sure. No, that's a good point you make. Like, it can be overwhelming to have everything in front of you, and yeah, if you can. Again, I mean, I like how you said, like, do your research. Like, I always tell students this. I tell students this all the time. Like, make sure that you are investing a lot of time in preparation and research of the company. Really internalize that job description. Start to come up with some good questions to ask them. That's really important. That's, I guess, a good transition. Like, what did you come in with questions prepared that you wanted to ask in interviews?
Yes. Always ask questions. Always come prepared with questions. So yeah, if I'm researching a company and I see like one of their values, like I'll go with Discover, for example. Discover, one of their values was volunteerism. So that was interesting to me. And then I know in COVID, like I mentioned, that a lot of people were volunteering. So I was like, okay, like, hey, like the interview, I'll tell the interview, how does Discover, like, what do you guys have planned for volunteering? Like, what did they do in the past? Do they have any plans in the future of volunteering anywhere? And they were able to, they did backpacks, and I think in Chatham, I think they had like a backpack drive. I believe they cleaned up parks and just stuff like that. This way, it lets the interviewer know that you're serious about this company and you want to join this company. It's good. And in terms of that, if an interviewer, if they could do a cool project, like they're on one of the team, he he was on the web development field, and I believe he played with React and Spring Boot. So I asked him some of the projects he made. And another one was on Apple Pay. So I just asked him about some of the questions about Apple Pay and like some of the technologies they use in that. So I'll do, a little bit of both. I asked a little bit questions about the company itself, and then a little bit questions about the interviewer's work, pretty much. I think you're on.
I'm on mute again. I did it twice. I shared in the chat a link to our tech and design LinkedIn career community on there. But we had another question in the chat, again from William. What do you think about job hopping versus staying and climbing at a company? I don't know what your thoughts
that's a
are
hard
on
question.
that, Raj. Yeah.
I say do what's best for you. If you like the company and they're treating you well, you like working on the project, and you want to take on a leadership role, and they provide good opportunities for you, just climb the corporate ladder. If you don't like the company, you think the pay is not good, or the projects, it's not good, you're not a fan of, just job hop. I would say just do what's best for you, and yeah, just do what's best for you, because it's your life, so you want to do what's best for you and your family or whoever you have. So I would just say that, do what's best for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's no one right answer for everybody, but I think some things to keep in mind, especially in this field, like you want to kind of always be working on new stuff, and not even if you don't have to be working with new programming languages necessarily all the time, but you do want to stay abreast of like what technological changes are happening, and do you need to start learning new languages in order to stay competitive, and asking questions of your employer like, hey, what kinds of teaching or training do you provide? Like, how can I be gaining skills in these resources? Either can you guys pay for training for me, or are there projects that you can put me on that will allow me to work with this stuff? This goes back to last year, but I think it still pertains. I was sitting in a webinar where they were talking about like job satisfaction for people coming out of college today. And the number one thing that came up was like access to training and growth, and not even growth at the company that they're at, but opportunity for growth throughout their career, regardless of the company. So I think that's something to just kind of keep in mind as you move forward and start your career and move forward in your career. I know we're kind of getting towards the end, so if you have a question you've been sitting on in the audience, now is a good time to ask it. Let me pull up this here. So Raj, what's the weirdest question you've ever had in an interview?
Oh wow, weirdest question, huh?
Or one that you least expected, maybe. It's a different way to put it.
Okay.
Most unprepared.
Yeah. Actually, I have a go on. I just remember it. So I was interviewing at a company, and they had this weird question about like something with data. So they were like, okay, like the country no, it's Paris. Sorry, Paris. They have like 10 grocery stores. They're selling like cheese, and they're like, okay, how are you gonna come up? How are you gonna like gather all this data of all the cheese and then present it to like a client? And I was like, I had to ask them. I actually told them to reiterate the question again, because I was just so like, it just caught me off guard. I was like, wait, what? Where did Paris come from?
I like what you said. You asked him to rephrase the question or ask it again. I think that's something every job seeker can keep in mind. Like, you can do that. Like, can you rephrase that, or can you put that a different way? Or I don't quite understand what you mean by this. Like, job interviewers don't always have perfectly constructed questions, and sometimes things can be confusing or come out of left field. So if you need more time to think, or if you're just not understanding what they're asking, like ask some clarifying questions of them. Like, I think always remember too, this brings up a larger point. Like, it's not just the company interviewing you to make sure that you're the best fit for this role. It's also you interviewing the company to make sure that this is the best fit for you. Raj, I don't know if you can speak to that, or if that's something that you tried to keep in mind when you were interviewing.
Yeah. When I'm researching these companies, for me, growth is very important to me. So everyone has different values. I think growth is very important to me because I always want to learn stuff. Thing about computer science, like, you're always learning. There's always cool things to learn. Uh, like every day is not the same. So growth is very important to me. And then if a company isn't providing growth opportunities, then I shouldn't. There's no point in me to interview with them because they're not going to provide me growth opportunities. So I would say definitely it goes both ways. So they're interviewing you, and then you're also interviewing them. So you want to be happy during your work. I know it's work, but you still want to be like, you still want to like what you're doing.
You want to be satisfied with what you do. You want to feel good about
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And that brings up two things. Like one, like even if you're in school now and you maybe don't have any work experience yet, like that doesn't mean that you can't demand or ask things of an employer. And I don't mean to say that like I require $200,000 a year right out of school. That's not what I mean. I mean, like, you can ask those clarifying questions just to make sure this is a good fit. Don't think that you don't have any leverage. Like if you didn't have any leverage, they wouldn't be interviewing at all. They wouldn't be taking time out of their day to talk to you. They're talking to you because they think that you can provide value to them. That means you have something that they want. So you want to make sure that you're giving your services to a place that's going to appreciate it, a place you're going to be happy in. And also just getting back to having those questions prepared. Those questions should help clarify for you whether this is a position, a role, and a company that you want to work in and for. And I think just going in prepared and having those questions prepared is just going to automatically make you more confident in those interviews too, because they're going to get at that point of saying, I have something to offer and something to offer them without having to come across as cocky in an interview or anything like that. So maybe I'll ask one or two more. What's one thing that you wish you knew at the start of your job search that you know now?
One thing.
And maybe this is something you mentioned already that you want to kind of reiterate.
I want to say like asking questions, like, because when I first started out, like when the interviewer would ask me, "Do you have any questions?" Like I would say no. So like that's not a good look. You want to come prepared asking with questions, and I wish I knew that during the start of when I was first applying for my job search, and like when I was first looking for a job and an internship. So I think I would say that. So just ask questions, make sure you research the company, and make sure if the interviewer is doing something cool, like I thought Apple Pay was cool. I was like, hey, can you talk more about like your work with Apple Pay at Discover? Just ask that. So then that way they know that you're invested in the company, and then you have some good questions, and then they'll know, hey, this guy's serious, and who knows, you might be working with them in the future, so you never know.
Yeah, that's a great point. Bringing up specific products that they're working on. How bad is it to be visibly nervous?
I mean, I still get. I mean, I'm nervous all the time during the interview. Before the coffee chat, I mean, I was nervous too. So I don't know if I look nervous right now, but yeah, I mean, you're always gonna be well. For me at least, I can't speak for everyone else. I'm always gonna be nervous. It's like an interview. It's a big thing. I just, like before I start, I just take some few deep breaths, have my water with me, and just calm down. And then once you're interviewing and you do more and more, you'll get into the groove, and you'll appear less nervous. And yeah.
Just to add to that too.
But you don't want to be nervous, of course, but like, it is kind of bad to look nervous, but like, it's a normal thing. Everyone's nervous, like you're applying for a job, so
I like
a big step
said.
in your career.
I think if it's important to you and you don't have complete control of the situation, I think it's completely natural and normal to be nervous. So any interview, I think it's okay to be nervous. That just means it's important to you. I think it's what you do with that nervous energy that counts. I think if you go into the interview unprepared, maybe you don't know how to talk about your projects real well, you don't know your background real well, you don't have any questions prepared, I think that's when that nervous energy can manifest visibly. You know, that's when you can maybe like, you're twitching your fingers, you're like, you're saying a lot, you're blanking on questions. I just said right there. I must be nervous. And I think when you go in prepared, when you've gone over your projects, you know how to talk about them, you know how to talk about your background, you have really great questions to ask, you've done a lot of research on the company, you still might be nervous, but that nervous energy is going to manifest as excitement for being there, because you know that you feel really good about it, you know you've prepared, and you know that whether you get the job or not, you gave it everything that you had, and some things are just out of your control. Is it okay to put simple projects you did for homework, such as analyzing text, or no projects at all on your resume? Raj, what do you think about that?
In my opinion, I wouldn't put homework. So I believe it was like analyzing text in a file. Personally, for me, I wouldn't put that because the project is not scalable enough to like. So actually, I don't want, because like analyzing a text, I would say maybe it might be like a Python. I think that's like the first language. I think DePaul still does that. Python's like I think he probably used Python. If you only put that little small program on GitHub, there's not really much to talk about. But I think even if you, I mean, it doesn't have to be like the next like Google or anything when you do these projects. Just try. Like, I mean, I had a simple HTML and CSS web page that wasn't related to class at all. It was just something simple, nothing earth shattering, but it just shows that like you tried, you put the effort in, you learn something new, and then they can see like, hey, you know, this guy played around with paragraphs, this guy practiced some little CSS here and there. So I would say try to do these. If you have the time, just make some time to maybe put some projects. And again, it doesn't have to be like the next Google or the next Apple or anything. Just put something.
Although if you're creating the next Google, you probably don't need to work for anybody. You're probably good.
Yeah.
I'll say too, like if you have some of those older, simpler projects for some of your foundational classes, and maybe it's been 6 months or a year later, now that you've learned so much more stuff, can you go back to any of those projects and expand on them and really make them more robust, make them more your own? So you have kind of the seed or the germ of an idea that you can kind of build off of and then maybe include in a portfolio or a GitHub. Are Chrome extensions good resume projects?
Yeah, I would say they're. I personally never made a Chrome extension project, but I think they're great projects. There's so much you can talk about, like what technology you used. Some questions, some interviews are like, hey, why did you make a Chrome extension? They might be just curious, and you can answer that. So I think that's a great project.
I think this is a good place to start kind of bringing things back home here. I do, before we break out, I mentioned this up top. I know we had some people join us late. Google is going to be on campus, on our DePaul campus, next Monday, next Tuesday. I'm putting links to all 3 events in the chat. They are all in Handshake. This is one of them. I think that'll work. And then I'm going to put the 2 other ones. Just bear with me, folks. So, you know, if we want Google to, I know we hear from students all the time, why don't you get companies like Google to come? Well, sometimes we do, and then students don't show up for it and they don't want to come back. So if you want Google to come back, show up for this stuff, and then they'll come back. One more. Sorry, I'm fine. So usually I have someone helping me at these things, manning the chats. I'm doing everything myself, so I'm a little slower today than normal. I do apologize. This is the last one. So if you can, you don't have to attend all 3. If any of them you can attend, try to attend, RSVP, attend. So I want to again thank Raj Patel for joining us today and sharing his insights, his experiences, both successes, both struggles you faced. I think it's always valuable for students to learn not just the good stuff, but the bad or the hard stuff too, to know that they're not alone in being in these situations. So really appreciate your candor and your honesty. And yeah, please, everyone, keep on the lookout for future events from us. Hopefully we'll see you at the job fair tomorrow. Raj, any closing thoughts, anything you want to say to end things?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of the day to come here. Yeah, this was my first coffee chat, so hopefully you guys liked it. If you have any questions, yeah, feel free to like email me or yeah, just message me. Any closing thoughts? If you have time, please go to the career fairs. I think even you even if you don't like the companies working there, maybe just go there, just research the company. Who knows, there might be an opportunity for you. And for projects, make sure to have a GitHub, put anything on there. Something's better than anything. And remember, even if the project's like, if you think it's simple, just put it on there. It doesn't have to be the next or the next Google. If it is, good. But if it isn't, that's okay too. It just shows that you're willing to learn.